At 1:30 a.m. on January 1st, 2012, a husband and wife were driving home on Route 322 towards Clearfield, Pennsylvania. Suddenly, they witnessed a large creature run across the road. The couple claimed that the creature was moving very fast and was swinging its arms, but not in the manner that a human would, and that the bottom of the creature's feet were lighter in color. Although the couple claimed to have had a good view of the creature, they said it was moving too fast to determine an exact size or height. As the possible Bigfoot crossed the road, the husband attempted to angle his car headlights toward it. However, by this point, the wife had become quite frightened and urged him to keep driving. On August 2nd, 2009, shortly after sundown, a group of men were sitting around a campfire at a campsite about 15 minutes from Prince Gallatin Park. The group of men then heard some type of whistling noise and felt like they were being watched. Unalarmed, a couple of the men would go get firewood, but one of the men stayed behind by the fire as he could not get over the sound that he had just heard. Shortly thereafter, the man by the fire would hear the whistling sound again, along with what he described as something trying to stay quiet. The other men returned to the fire, having also heard the noise. The men shouted that they had guns and were not afraid. The noise got closer. One of the men stood up and shined a flashlight in the sound's direction, while another fired off a BB gun into the woods. That is when a rock was flung back towards the men, missing by just a few feet, followed by an apparent throat-clearing sound. The men hurried to their vehicle and proceeded to drive up to the top of a close-by hill. The men waited on top of this hill for around 20 minutes until they started to hear the same noises again, and in a panic, they left the area. Later that night, the men attempted to return to their campsite. However, when they arrived, they claimed to have seen a brown head peering slightly above 7 to 8 foot tall bushes, and the noises they heard previously started to get louder. The men could not take it anymore, and they left for the night. They returned the next day to gather their things and were not able to find any signs of the possible Bigfoot. In November 2011, near Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, a woman was on a smoke break with 2 other people when they saw a figure across the road walking in a field. As the woman watched the figure, it appeared to go down onto 4 legs and then back up onto 2 legs and start walking again. The woman said she was not close enough to see it well, but thought it looked way too big to be a person as it was fairly tall compared to the surrounding trees, and that it was white in color. In May of 1989, near Logansport, Pennsylvania, a man was walking home from a friend's house. He was walking along railroad tracks that led into Roston and Ford City. While walking along the tracks, the man began to hear a noise behind him. The man described the noise as a type of huffing similar to a horse or a bear. The man turned around, and when he did, he claims to have seen a shadowed figure standing around 8 feet tall with silverish-colored eyes. He also began to notice a smell, which he described as smelling like dead animals. The man immediately started running, and reportedly never looked back, out of fear. On October 15th, 2008, 3 men were staying at a cabin in Cameron County, Pennsylvania for hunting season. While they were in the cabin preparing food, they heard banging on one of the cabin walls. 2 of the men went outside to investigate, but they did not see anything, so they went back inside. A few minutes later, they heard 3 loud bangs on the cabin door, and again went outside to check. The 2 men circled the cabin, but did not find anything. They did, however, smell an awful odor of which they could not explain. While heading back inside the cabin, an apple was tossed in their direction. Deciding they had had enough, the men began to pack up their things and load them into their vehicle to leave. As they were leaving, Allegedly, a stick was thrown in their direction and hit the rear quarter panel of their truck. They still did not see anything. On their way out of the area, they checked if anyone was staying at any of the nearby cabins, thinking they might be being messed with, but there was no other people staying in the area. On February 8th, 2011, around 7:45 a.m., a man was driving to Chicago and was entering the Pennsylvania Turnpike. The man looked to his left before merging. That is when he saw a tall figure, described as being massive in size, and the color of tree bark. He quickly lost sight of it, so he turned his vehicle around. The man then claims to have witnessed the creature take 3 large strides and disappear into the tree line. In 1984, a couple were camping near state land in Weatherly, Pennsylvania. The couple were sleeping when the husband was awoken by a loud, high-pitched howl coming from the valley below. The sound started to get closer. The husband got out of the tent and proceeded to yell in the direction of the sound, an attempt to scare whatever creature this was away. The creature yelled back at him. The husband then claimed to have got a slight glimpse of this possible Bigfoot with his flashlight, but the creature had started running, and its high-pitched howl faded into the distance. On December 15th, 1995, near New Albany, Pennsylvania, a man was sitting in a tree stand hunting when he heard movement. He looked through his rifle scope and claimed to have seen a 7 to 8 foot tall creature with reddish-brown hair and a massive-sized waist. The creature appeared to be watching the hunter. The creature then quickly backed away and went out of the man's sight. In the evening of January 2009, in Chester County, Pennsylvania, a couple and their son were camping. The dad had just returned on an ATV, and his wife and son approached him, frightened, as they had just heard something pushing over trees and breaking branches in a wooded hillside area behind their camping trailer. The family proceeded to search the area with a flashlight, but whenever they turned the flashlight on, the loud brush crashing and limb breaking would stop, and whenever they turned it off, the noises would start again. No creature or person was ever able to be seen. In the spring of 1990, near Shaler, Pennsylvania, a group of young men discovered 2 deer, one fawn and one adult doe, killed by what they believed to be a Bigfoot. The 2 deer seemed to be stored up under some undergrowth. The adult doe had 3 broken legs, with one of the rear legs being almost twisted off, and the fawn had an obvious broken back. Aside from the broken bones, there was no other evident wounds on the deer, and was not reminiscent of a dog or a bear attack. The young men reportedly left and returned a day later. However, the 2 deer were gone, with no blood or signs of the deer being dragged away.